Welcome to Animal DNA, our extraordinary expedition through the animal kingdom. We'll explore the unique traits and characteristics of animals of all kinds, how species relate to one another, and ways in which they survive and thrive in their diverse environments around the planet. And so our journey begins. Today, we'll learn about some of the most intriguing creatures that inhabit the land, and more often the air, birds. All birds share many characteristics, but did you know not all of them can fly? What is the difference between flying and flightless birds? Key differences flightless birds have from their flying counterparts are their smaller wing bones and the absence of or greatly reduced keel on their breastbone. Birds come in all shapes and sizes, like ducks, eagles, penguins, vultures, owls, seagulls, and ostriches. Birds belong to the order Passeriformes, which includes almost all small birds similar to canaries, sparrows, and larks. Their main common characteristic is that they all sing. The order Ave includes these birds and also other non-Passeriformes orders, such as Galliformes, hens, Falconiformes, vultures and sparrowhawks, Columbiformes, such as pigeons. Birds are found virtually everywhere there is life on the planet. They have backbones, are warm-blooded, and reproduce oviparously, which means they lay eggs. And their hearts are divided into 4 cavities. Birds have no teeth, although they do have beaks that can rip, tear, or crack a nut. The most spectacular thing about birds is obvious. They have wings and feathers. Therefore, most of them are capable of realizing a dream impossible for humans. Flying. To fly without the aid of any type of device. To help them fly, most birds have strong bones, powerful muscles, and an extremely efficient way of breathing, which allows them to soar and stay aloft. But, as we know now, not all birds can fly. Penguins, for example, although they can certainly walk in a particular way, jump, glide, and swim, cannot fly. Ostriches are flightless birds too, but they make up for it by being the fastest bipedal animal on Earth. Today we will learn more about 3 of the most beautiful and majestic birds in existence: the peacock, the macaw, and the flamingo. Although formerly cataloged in the order Siconiform, along with storks, herons, and ibis, all very long-necked birds, flamingos are showy and exuberant water birds that belong to the order Phoenissoteridae. There are 6 flamingo species: greater, lesser, Chilean, James's, Andean, and American. They all have small heads, although they appear larger than they are because of their big, downward curving beaks, adapted for digging in the mud to find food. Flamingos feed by a method called water filtration. For this, the beak has lateral canaliculi, which are a kind of strainer for them to obtain their natural food, zooplankton and phytoplankton. It also has filamentous structures called lamellae, small lamellae on the jaws, and a rough, large, long tongue to separate everything. Through protrusions on the tongue and rigid structures in the jaws, they pump water, retain particles, and scrape food to keep only what they need. The beaks can be yellow, orange, or pink, and the tip is almost always black. This slender bird has a long neck that it controls very well, allowing it to achieve elegant and curious postures. Flamingos are known to stand on one leg, as they balance their body temperature in this way. Since they live in aquatic areas, keeping one leg in the water helps them not to lose their body heat or cool down as needed. They have 4 toes, 3 front toes, and a smaller rear toe. Their long, slender legs allow them to move delicately through shallow water, while looking down to find fish, shrimp, or crustaceans to feed on. You've heard that we are what we eat, and flamingos are the color of their food. These birds would be closer to white if it weren't for their diet. Algae and crustaceans are rich in carotenoid pigment that gives them that unique salmon pink color to their feathers. The tips of their wing feathers are black, just like their beaks. Flamingos produce clucking, guttural, and nasal sounds. Mating with the same individual for life, they are one of the most monogamous species on Earth. Both the male and female participate in the egg incubation period. When they are born, they remain in a sort of nursery until they are about 100 days old. During this period, the parents can see their offspring and feed them. After this period, the birds become independent. Fossil studies indicate that flamingos have existed for 7 million years. This bird is one of the tallest birds on the planet, reaching a height of 5 feet tall. The female is usually smaller than the male. Flamingos can live up to 40 years in the wild. As we have seen already, flamingos can fly, although we are more likely to see them walking around, likely in a group of flamingos gathering to socialize in shallow pools of large bodies of water. But yes, flamingos are migratory birds, living in large colonies and flying more than 300 miles a day to feed and find safe places to build their nests. The different species of flamingos are spread throughout South America and in places such as Cuba, the Bahamas, and the Yucatan. They can also be found in some regions of Africa, as well as in southern Europe. We'll be right back with more Animal DNA. Welcome back to Animal DNA. Let's see if you can answer this trivia question. Which country claims the flamingo as its national bird? A. United States. B. Brazil. C. The Bahamas. D. Egypt. Flamingos are popular symbols of fun and colorful places where the summer sun always seems to shine, such as Miami, Florida, in the United States. In ancient Egypt, they were believed to be representations of the god Ra and the sun's rays. Populations of Chilean flamingos are found in central Peru, both coasts of southern South America, Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, Bolivia, and southern Brazil. But in none of these places are flamingos the national bird. The correct answer is actually C, the Bahamas. Next, we will study another spectacular creature, one of the most splendorous birds that exists on our planet, the peacock. The peacock, or Pavo cristatus, a species of the galliform bird from the family Phasianidae, known as the Indian peacock, or peacock with a cobalt blue breast, known for having an extraordinary polychromatic tail that seems to have eyes that watch those who admire it. Male peacocks are the only ones with ornamental feathers. Females have soft feathers in variations of brown tones. Peacocks' tails cover more than 60% of their bodies. The colored markings can have green, blue, gold, and other shades in a stunning explosion of iridescent colors. The purpose of the peacock's large tail is to attract females. To perform mating rituals, they majestically spread it out in a fan shape behind their backs, touching the ground on both sides. The beauty of their feathers serves to help females choose their mates. Peacock feathers have microscopic structures that reflect light, which are responsible for these fluorescent colors. The peacock's tail only develops after 3 years, so it is difficult to identify the gender of this bird at birth. Even so, they grow quickly and can walk after just a week. They learn to fly after a few months. Peacocks have 4 toes on each foot, 3 of which point forward, while the 4th faces backwards, so they can grasp branches and climb trees. One of the sounds the peacock makes is so low-pitched that humans cannot hear it. They produce it when they shake their tails in a certain way. These movements produce a noise almost as loud as a car engine running. However, human ears only perceive it as a whisper, like soft grass moved by the wind. The sounds emitted by the peacock that humans can hear are not very appealing. They can be strident and unpleasant. Peacocks do not like to be alone. They tend to walk in small groups. They are a social species. In addition to being with each other, they also like to interact with humans. However, peacocks tend to be quite aggressive and become territorial when a stranger crosses the boundaries they set, human or peacock alike. The average lifespan of the peacock is 10 to 20 years. Peacocks are polygamous and lay a litter of 3 to 6 eggs, which they nurture and care for about a month before the incubated eggs hatch into baby peacocks. Most peacocks are able to reproduce at about 3 years of age. They are intelligent birds that lay unfertilized eggs in places far from their nests to confuse predators that may hunt them. They fly short distances as early as 3 days after hatching. However, they usually prefer to walk and only flutter or fly when escaping from a threat or needing shelter at night. It is the national bird of India and has mystical significance in Hinduism, as it symbolizes knowledge, benevolence, and compassion. Hindus also consider the peacock sacred because they believe that the spots on its tails are the eyes of the gods. The blue peacock lives in India and Sri Lanka, although the species has spread to different places. They prefer farms, forests, and warm regions where they can access plants and trees. The decline of the peacock population over the years is partly due to hunting. But another reason is the absence of suitable habitats for them to nest and reproduce. We'll be right back with more Animal DNA. Welcome back to Animal DNA. Let's see if you can answer this trivia question. Do you think these claims about peacocks are true or false? A. They can kill poisonous snakes. B. They are one of the largest flying birds. C. They are able to emit a wide variety of calls, even meow. D. There are all white peacocks. If you think these statements are true, you're right. Peacocks are one of the largest flying birds in existence. In addition to their characteristic bright colors, there are some that are completely white, the result of leucism, a condition that lightens their skin and feather pigments. They are very brave and capable of exterminating poisonous snakes that endanger them and their offspring. And when they sing, well, the truth is singing is not a skill in which they excel. The sounds they emit resemble a cat's meow. From flamingo pink to blue peacock, we move on to the multicolored macaws that cross the blue skies, leaving yellow, green, and red brushstrokes in the air. Macaws are birds of the order Psittaciformes, of the family Psittacidae. With extraordinarily bright-colored plumage. They belong to the same family as parrots and parakeets. There are 17 varieties of macaw, 8 of which have disappeared or are critically endangered. They have a larger head and body than parrots and much more colorful plumage. This elegant and colorful bird is found in Central and South American rainforests, usually in pairs, and those pairs coexist in groups of 30 or more birds, where they spend the day chatting with their companions, looking for fruits and nuts. They also inhabit the jungles of Mexico and forests in northeastern Argentina. There are some macaws found in urban dwellings, likely because they were taken there in captivity and then released. These friendly birds win the sympathy of humans who feed them from their windows. But make no mistake, macaws may behave in a tame manner, but they are wild birds, not domestic. They have a hooked beak and claws with 4 toes, 2 forward and 2 backward, with curved nails that allow them to cling to tree branches. They're very noisy and squeak while eating and grooming. Macaws can live a very long time, sometimes exceeding 50 years. They stand out for their intelligence, can understand much of what is said to them, and can repeat about 30 words. These exotic animals are highly sought after, and their indiscriminate hunting has caused some species to become endangered. One of the world's best-known macaws is the Ara Blue macaw parrot, made popular by the animated movie Rio. That species was officially declared extinct from the wild in early 2019. But recently some may have been sighted, giving hope for their preservation. Thousands of scarlet macaws, Ara macaw, which used to inhabit the Mexican jungles, have suffered a decline in numbers and are also endangered. This type of macaw was considered extinct for a few years, until a wave of migration made scientists realize that they were still alive. To communicate, they use very loud noises, as if they are shouting or chattering. The colorful feathers of these exuberant birds appear in their 2nd month of life, but they only reach flight in their 3rd month. After that, they need to stay close to their parents to feed and improve their flight form until they are ready to leave home. And with that, our journey has come to an end. See you next time on Animal DNA, where we humans decode all the secrets of our friends in the animal kingdom to learn more about them and a little bit more about ourselves, too.